It's a new year and it's time for an update on the DNA recombination project. Over the last year, I've gathered more samples and been able to analyze that data and how recombination can help you find some of your ancestors. Howdy, I'm Andy Lee with Family History Fanatics, and this is a segment of DNA. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell if you want to be notified about upcoming episodes. Now, recombination is the process where, in the formation of sex cells of a parent, the two chromosomes from each one of their parents get together and swap locations so that the chromosome that is passed on to their children is a new and different chromosome that's actually a combination of those two chromosomes. If you would like to contribute to this project, all you need to do is have the GEDmatch kit numbers for a grandparent and a grandchild. And there's a link in the description below that you can submit that information. I started the DNA recombination project in July of 2017, where I started collecting information about grandparents and grandchildren and how that DNA recombined. About a month later, I found out that Blaine had been doing a similar project earlier in the year where he had just been looking at maternal grandparents and their grandchildren. Now, in the description, I have a link to the paper that he wrote, but there's a couple of differences in what Blaine was looking at and what I've been looking at. Blaine's project was focused on maternal recombination and helping to quantify how much recombination is happening in those maternal chromosomes. My project, on the other hand, looks at both the maternal and paternal chromosomes, and I started it with the goal of seeing how this information could be used to help identify different family clusters or how people are related. One of the hallmarks of good science is replication. Basically, if two experiments are done using the same criteria, then the results they come up with should be very similar. Let me show you how the results of Blaine's project and mine so far line up. Blaine's project used 250 samples of maternal grandparent-grandchild pairs that he crowdsourced from GEDmatch. In my dataset, I've gathered 180 samples of maternal grandparent-grandchild pairs that I'm going to compare to Blaine's. Now, I don't have access to Blaine's dataset, so I can't tell you how much overlap there is between our two sample sets. But Blaine gathered his information primarily by posting it on Facebook, whereas I've gathered my information from our blog and from our YouTube channel. Based on his description of how a recombination was identified, we've used the same criteria for identifying recombination between grandparent and grandchild pairs. To start, Blaine found that the recombination frequency was 40.8. That means 40.8 recombinations per generation. Now, this is the total number of recombinations across all autosomes, so chromosomes 1 through 22. My dataset calculates this rate at 40.9, and this is excellent confirmation that we're both looking at the same type of information. Now, Blaine found that the number of recombinations varied between 17 and 66, and this is where my data varied a little bit. I found a variation between 24 and 63. While the upper limit of 63 is similar to what other studies have found, the lower limit on Blaine's information seems to be a little bit low. Two other datasets, the AGRE and the FHS, calculated that lower limit at 22 and 24 respectively. Now, their averages were about the same as what Blaine and I have come up with. So overall, it still looks like we're still looking at the same things. Blaine's dataset indicates that he had 3 samples that were between 17 and 22. And so I suspect that these 3 samples probably are actually paternal grandparents that were just misidentified as maternal grandparents. I ran across this same problem several times where people confused paternal and maternal with grandmother and grandfather. Next, let's look at the maximum number of recombinations that happen on any chromosome. For 8 of the 22 chromosomes, Blaine and I came up with the exact same number of the maximum. Another 13 of those chromosomes were off by only 1, either above or below. On chromosome number 2 and chromosome number 13, we differed by more than 1 recombination. For chromosome number 2, I had 9 as the maximum, and Blaine had 6. Looking through my entire data set, I only had 4 samples that were more than 6 recombinations on chromosome number 2. And so this is probably a result of the randomness in recombination and the limited sample size of our data sets. For chromosome number 13, I had 4 as the maximum amount of recombinations, and Blaine had 6 as the maximum amount. Since I don't have access to Blaine's data set, I couldn't say how many samples he has that are larger than 4 recombinations. But if I look at the averages on chromosome number 13 that I came up with, which was 1.5, and which Blaine came up with, which is 1.372, then it is very likely that these are 1 or 2 samples that are above this 4, and so are just outliers that are a result of the small sample size that both of us have. Next, sometimes recombination doesn't happen on a chromosome before it's passed on to the child. Blaine found 6 samples, or 2.4% of the time, that this didn't happen on 7 or more chromosomes in a sample set. I found the same thing in 1.1% of my samples, or 2 of those sample sets. Again, this is not very different results considering the small sample size that we have. This non-recombination happens a lot more often on the smaller chromosomes. So if we look at chromosomes number 19 through 22, what you can see is that our data is very similar. Both of our data sets follow the same pattern of 20 being less than 19, of 21 being twice as much as 20, and of 22 then being less than 21. Overall, there's a lot of replication in the analysis that I have done and what Blaine has done. And this indicates that the data that we're seeing as far as recombination rates and other things are accurate. I'll be continuing to collect data in the hopes that this can be useful in creating tools. And I'm not just looking at maternal grandparents. I'm looking at both maternal and paternal grandparents. In a previous video, I talked about the visual phasing chromosome selection matrix, which is an outgrowth of this project. Since that time, I've doubled the total number of samples that I have, which has refined the values throughout this table. And I've included a link to the table in the description below so you can download that and be able to use it in your own visual phasing work. Now, these are the types of tools that I was hoping to be able to create from this data. So let me show you what I've been working on next. One of the things I was looking at is the interior length of segments on maternal and paternal chromosomes and whether or not we could use those to identify maternal chromosomes from paternal chromosomes. Now, from the data I've gathered, I have more than 3,000 samples of internal chromosomes. Since maternal chromosomes recombine more often than paternal chromosomes, most of the data is for the maternal chromosomes. And unfortunately, right now, it doesn't look like there's enough information to really make a useful tool. While paternal chromosome segments are generally longer than maternal chromosome segments, on chromosome number 21, the smallest segments are actually paternal segments. And on chromosome number 13 and chromosome number 16, the longest segments are actually maternal segments. So this and several other discrepancies in the data have hindered me from being able to figure out how to use this to help identify people in any way. But I'm still working on it, and maybe next year with some more data, I'll be able to see how we can use different patterns of internal segment length to identify family groups or identify individuals, sort of the same way that I used for the visual phasing chromosome selection matrix. So keep on submitting your information, and I'll keep on trying to analyze it and figure out how we can use that data to help create tools help you in your genetic genealogy. If you have any questions about the DNA recombination project, put it in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer it. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and pass it along to all your friends.